Hey there YouTube, in this video you can expect to learn how to set up a mail server in your Raspberry Pi and learn how to send email like this programmatically from your Raspberry Pi through Python, either by connecting to your Raspberry Pi's mail server or your Gmail's SMTP server. You'll also go through a series of learning objectives, and once completed you'll have a general purpose script like this for your other projects that requires you to send notification to yourself when an event occurs, such as an event during an algorithmic trading, or when temperature changes in your I don't know, a project that you're working on, or when the IP address changes in your computer. So let's get to it.
This is video log number 9, and in this video I'm going to demonstrate two different ways we can use to send out an email using Python from an application, basically programmatically. In both ways, what we have to do is first connect to an SMTP server. The first method is we're going to connect to the Gmail SMTP server using your own username and password, and the second one is by creating your personal SMTP server in your Raspberry Pi, which I think is a bit cooler, but there's a reason you may want to do method 1, but I'll get to that in a second. Okay, first I'm going to connect to my Raspberry Pi. If you are using your Jupyter Notebook in Windows or Mac, you don't have to do this step. Or if you're connected directly to your Raspberry Pi, then you definitely don't have to do this step either, which is to connect your Raspberry Pi. But let's go and start off with our Jupyter Notebook. I use Jupyter Notebook as an IDE pretty much. It's the way I, sort of developed the work, and then I put them together later on, which will be our final step. Okay, so Jupyter Notebook is on. I'm going to connect, and there we go. So I am now connected to my Raspberry Pi through Jupyter Notebook, and we're going to do some Python coding. First thing first, let's import SMTP lib. You're going to need that. Then let's import email.utils, and then from email.mime.text import mime text. See if your tab complete works. If not, just type it in. There we go. The tab complete completed way after. Okay, next. Message is equal to mime text. Boy, the tab complete is really slow today. This is a test, and we're going to create a plain mime text. Let's add some additional stuff to this message, like subject. I'm going to call it Raspberry Pi. I'm also going to add from, and this is where we're going to use the email.utils.format ADR. Oh, good, tab completed. And this will take the name of the person who's sending the email. So it would be Pi. I'm going to call it Pi at Raspberry Pi. It's because I'm logged in as Pi and the machine is Raspberry Pi. I'm going to send it from here. So that's just, logically makes sense. And then message 2 is going to be email.utils.format ADR or address. I'm going to call this, and this is going to be a tuple or tuple.
I don't know how you guys pronounce it, recipient, and it's going to be me. By the way, this is my public email, so feel free to email me if you have any questions. Okay, so far so good. If you look at this objective right here, this is our guideline. We're going to follow this. I said we're going to enter through here. There's a reason. Okay, so let's try to first send that email. And we're going to send it through the Gmail Smtp server. How do we connect to Gmail Smtp server? Okay, so let's do that. Connect to Gmail SMTP. Server is equal to smtp lib.server, smtp, and the address is smtp.gmail.com, which is right here. And we need to know the port. So the port is what's going to be in numeric. So the port is for SSL is 465, and TLS and start TLS would be 587. So let's start with the 587 first, which is here. Okay, so 587. You also need to type in server.ehlo. Oops, sorry. And server dot start TLS. Okay, and just for I'm gonna set the debug level. Why does it do that? I just want to see a little bit more details when it actually completes. Debug level is equal to true. Server is not server. There we go. Done. And then the last item they need to type in is server.login before you can send in anything through this method. You would have to type in your username and password. .lawrence.con@gmail, and password is pipewrench. Don't be silly, this is not my password. I just temporarily created it, so don't even try. Of course, I'm gonna change it as soon as this is over. And boom. Let's see what happened. It said username and password not accepted. Great. Why? It's because we have to enable less secure app access. If you don't do that, then this is not going to work. So let's go to, how do we do that? You go to myaccount.google.com/security. If you scroll down, you're going to see something like less secure apps. It's because, if you do use Google services, you have to let them know you're not a bot, but you're also using your credentials, your username and password through a program, which is a little bit less secure than going through this browser. So let's turn it on first. Okay. So let's recap. myaccount.google.com/security, or if you just click on the left tab right here, security, scroll down to less secure apps and turn it on. Okay, so we got this part done. Let's cross this out. Done. And then let's see if this connects now. Okay, server.login. Accepted. Great. Awesome. And the last piece is server.sendmail. I'm going to say it's from Pi. You do still need to type in, even though you said from Pi, comma Pi at Raspberry Pi, you still need to type this in over here because the function takes it from, to, and then also the message. So it's going to be Raspberry Pi. And to is going to be in the form of a list. So Okay, and the message is going to be message dot to string, or is it as string? As string, there we go. That's it. Let's see what happened. It says okay, it was sent, I believe. And I'm going to server dot quit at the end. You just want to end the whole process. Close, basically flush out the connection. Let's go check if we've got it in an email. All right, looks like we just did. All right, what does it look like? Okay, so it's from Pi, but it's got my email address, and to the recipient, which is also me. Now, you're probably wondering why it didn't send the email as Pi, and the person Pi with the email address Pi at Raspberry Pi. It's because Gmail noticed that I sent the mail from, well, first of all, through the SMTP, Gmail's SMTP server, and also it used my username and password. So it's got to be me who is emailing myself, which is why even though you are going to name it as this or someone else, I could have changed it to another legitimate email address. This is still going to say it was sent from me, because Gmail automatically notices that you're using your username and password to send this email. Cool. So this is successful. Let's cross this out too. Okay. Now, here's the next part. What I want to talk about is you don't want to send, you don't want to use your personal email address and your password like so in the app, right? We don't know what it is that we're going to create. Later on, we're going to create a nice little class where you can use the class for a general purpose email sending class, basically through Python. But what you don't want to do is basically you don't want to use your username and password in an app, right? You want to create, you want to keep them separate. And in order for you to do that, Google actually allows you to create separate passwords that you would use in addition to your username and password for all other Gmail services like Gmail, YouTube, and Google Drive and things like that. But if you want to use if you want to build an application and the application should connect to Google services, then you don't want to use your personal Gmail username and password. So how do we do this? You do this by generating what's called app passwords. But before you can do that, you need to enable two-step verification or two-step authentication. So let's do that. Okay, get started. Okay, once you've done that process, you should be able to generate passwords. There we go, app password. So let's do this. We've done this. This is done. Now generate passwords for apps. This is cool. So let's do this. Again, let's type in my password. Okay, select the app. Mail, calendar, contacts, YouTube. I'm gonna use a custom. Custom email app. I'm gonna call it that. And that is my password. Good. Done. and let's go try it. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's try to connect using our new password, which is that. Alright, so server.login. Wait, we need to actually connect to the server first. Accepted, good. Good. And did it send the email? It should have. And there we go. Right? Done. I was able to send an email through the SMTP server using the new password. This is cool. Very cool. Let's try it again. Let's try it again just so that this is a test using our new app password. Okay. So let's set this up again. Okay. Accepted, done, and quit. Should be fairly quick. This is a test using our new app password. Great. Perfect. So we're going to cross this out too. So now, this is the way you're supposed to do this. If you are going to use your Gmail SMTP server, your Gmail or Google account to send an email, you must and you should generate passwords, generate a app password and use that in your application and not your, so that you can also track it, right? You can track what's going on. So password allowing app to access account created, there should be. If you could definitely review them so that you know who is accessing your account through, whether an app password or you yourself. Awesome. The next item I want to talk about is, well, we've already done this part, right? Send email using, oh boy, this is terrible. It's TLS, okay, not TSL. Send email using TLS and start TLS. So we've done this. Okay. The other way, which is the Ssl method, the difference between SSL and TLS, I believe TLS is a successor to the SSL. SSL came first. TLS is, I think, a much more secure or something like that. But you could still use SSL. So the way you would do that is, let's go back up. Nothing much is going to change between these, but we are going to do this part slightly different. So SMTP, SSL, there. And it's going to be smtp.gmail.com. And the port is 465. And I'm going to server.set debug level. That's all you need. You don't need to do ehlo, which is like almost hello, and start TLS. You don't need to do that. Okay, set debug level. Just want to see level is true. Good. And server login. Again, accept it. Done. Done. Let's go back. There, two more, right? This just came in, 246, 246. So yeah, you can use either one of these methods, but in order for you to use Gmail's SMTP server, you have to send your email through a secure connection, either an SSL or TLS. Okay, so this part is considered done. Great. Now let's move on to the next method, which is method 2. Okay, before I start method 2, let me just clean this up a little bit. In order to send an email through method 2, we have to install, well, we're going to start here. We're going to try to install Postfix. Postfix is a mail server. Okay, so, But before we can install Postfix, we have to install what's called mail utils, which is pretty much a dependency for Postfix. So let's do it. Sudo apt-get install mail utils. Okay, next install sudo apt-get install Postfix. Alright, now this part is done. We just installed Postfix. Let's configure it now. Alright, tab. Okay. We're going to set it up as a send-only server. So follow these methods. Internet site, click OK. Just accept the default. Pi at Raspberry Pi is going to be our mail address. We have to configure it just a little further to make sure that this is going to work out exactly the way we want it. So sudo nano etc I think it's postfix main.cf. Good. Leave everything the way it is except all of the defaults, and here is where you need to change. Init underscore interfaces should be loopback only, just like that. Control X, yes, and accept. There. And just to make sure that everything is okay, I'm gonna just read the main file. Okay, so this is set to that. And last item, we want to restart Postfix. And you do that by saying sudo systemctl restart Postfix. Good. Now let's send an email, a test email, see if it works. Echo. This is a test using the mail function. S stands for subject. Our subject has been Raspberry Pi, so let's keep it the same. And the email is orangecon@gmail.com. Let's just give it a second. Oh, this part is done. Right, so nothing came out of I don't think it worked. Okay, let's check if there's anything stuck in the queue. So post queue. Aha, looks like that email we sent got stuck here. Okay. I apologize. I did this purposely because there's a reason. The one caveat to this process is that you have to make sure your ISP doesn't block port 25 for both in and outgoing. So incoming and outgoing has to be enabled, or port needs to be forwarded from your ISP to your modem, basically to your public IP address. But not all ISP allows you to do that. So this is the method you would take only if your ISP allows you to have a open port 25. And let me show you how. I subscribe to Optimum Online, and for me it looks like this, where I go to the configuration page and I click on the port 25 button, and it takes me to the next page and lets me know that it's going to reboot, and once it's done it brings me back to the page again, and it just shows me that now it's open. Alright, so I've just enabled it. Let's go check it out now. Alright, so okay, let's try to send that email again. But before we send that email, we need to first clear our queue. So sudo, let's clear that queue. Sudo, or just delete everything from the queue. It's post super d, as you can tell from the history. It's all, I messed something up before. Okay, so if we run that command, it should just delete all of the emails that are in the queue. And if we just run it again, it would be sudo post queue QUE P. There, mail queue is empty. Now we can try to test that email again. Okay, so this is a test, mail with the subject Raspberry Pi to that email address. Okay, I just ran this command. Now let's do post queue again. Mail queue is empty. That means that mail must have gone. Okay. Alright, it's not here, but definitely check your spam folder. And there you go. Look at that, huh? It is here. And it says, remember before it used to say from me? It doesn't say from me anymore because you're not using your username and password to send this, right? You're using a mail server that is in your Raspberry Pi right now. So if I was to study this thing, it says from Pi at Raspberry Pi. Remember, during our configuration, we chose this to be our email, and it's to me, and the subject is Raspberry Pi. Okay, so it didn't. I think I know why it's a spam. You know, amongst many other things. I mean, this thing obviously looks suspicious, but you know, this was not sent through an Ssl or TLS server. There was no encryption going on in here, so that's probably why. But let's try to report this as not spam, so it doesn't go there, and it actually goes to our WAN directory, because you know, early on I created a filter. Great. So how do we use this now? Can we use this through our application? Let's try to use Python to send this. So I'm gonna turn on my Jupyter Notebook again. That should be running, and good. There we go. So let's run all of these lines, but I'm not gonna run those. I'm gonna go back here all the way to the bottom, and here I'm going to say server is equal to smtp lib.smtp. It's going to be localhost. Would you believe that, huh? Oh, sorry, smtp lib twice, man. There. That resolved. Okay, and what we need is send mail. Okay, we definitely need this. In fact, why don't we do this? Server.set. I just want to see what it looks like. I do want to see the debug level. Debug level is equal to true. Okay. All right, good. And then I'm going to just copy paste the one from the previous lines, and let's see what it looks like. Aha, it's queued as that. Oh boy. Can I check my queue? Did it come in? I don't know yet. Okay, so I want to check my queue. Queue is empty, so that means it must have gone. What happened? Oh, you know what? Let's check my spam folder again. Aha! That's it. It's slightly different, okay, because it says recipient, and I think it's most likely because it's just not being but it worked. Okay, so report not let's try to do this again. All right, let's try to do this again. This is a test using our nope, just using Postfix. Postfix. Okay, so subject Raspberry Pi, from Pi, recipient, done. How cool is that? All you're doing right now, well, I'm going to try to quit the server first from the previous lines. Server, good. And let's try to reestablish the server again. Okay, we're going to connect to localhost, send mail. It's queued. Let's check my queue again. And it's still there, okay. Oh, okay, now it's gone. So it must have gone. And then I'm going to quit since it's done. I'm going to go back to my when, and where is this? This is a test using your new app. No. Oh, there we go. So it was just, okay, there. That's it. This is a test using Postfix. So there you go. Folks, we just did it. We connected to localhost. Done. So that was good. And we sent an email. So that's it. So that's how you would. Alright, so in this final step, I'm going to transfer and translate some of these things that we've been working on into a nice script. And we're going to use that towards the end to send out an email. But first, we should hide some of our credentials, like the username and password, and also the server name and the port, things like that, into a separate file. Even though we generated a password for ourselves, but to keep things in order and also to keep things nice and abstracted away from the code, meaning you don't want to hard code these information into the code. So if you ever need to change things, that means you have to change the code itself. So we'll do that in using a config parser. All right, so let's get to it. So here I'm creating the send email function. It's going to take the from address to subject and the actual message. And also the logic I'm creating in there is that when I initialize my email class using Gmail, I'm going to set up the server with the following specifications, namely what we've been using when we wanted to send an email through the Gmail's SMTP server. And if we don't initiate with Gmail, then we're going to use localhost using Postfix. Here I'm checking whether my config parser is working or not. So I'm simply going to print out whatever I'm reading in from the INI file. And it works. Perfect. And here right now I'm creating the message and removing some of the hard-coded things to variables that we're going to pass in through the sendMail function. Also, I removed the emails that utils for now. That's something that we can change later on, but for simple from and to in string format, the email address in string format should work. Alright, now that I'm done with it, I'm going to test it out.
and while doing so, it's gonna fail. Why did it fail? It's because I actually deleted the old email we generated early on in the earlier demonstration, and it's actually a perfect example of why we would need a config parser and an ini file. So essentially what I did was I went back to my ini file and saved the new password and reran the file again. And this is actually much safer and an easier thing to do instead of just revisiting my code and recoding. And you know, when you recode something, you obviously introduce more error in the process. So this is perfect example. It was accidental, but once I changed the password, everything worked out just fine. Now the class is a working class. What I'm gonna do is next is move the file over to my Raspberry Pi. This is the part that you don't have to do if you are already coding in the Raspberry Pi. You just have to make sure that both your config file and your Python script are in the same directory. If they're not, it's a good idea to set the path of the config file, the full path, not the relative path. So you could have the config file elsewhere. It doesn't have to be in the same directory, which I'm going to show you in a bit, where you have to change the code to give it the full path. So we'll do that in a bit. Alright, before we can use our new Python script, we have to first edit the file so that the config parser is pointing to the absolute path of the config file. So for me, it would be home pi Python scripts config.ini. Okay, so that should be good. Just want to make sure that it's all there. All right. So now what I can do is come back to my notebook. I can say import sys.path.append. I'm going to append the directory where my transmission.py sits. Now I can say from transmission import email. E is equal to email, and my server type is going to be Gmail right now. So e.send email would be pi at raspberrypi.ai. My tab complete is so slow. What's also because my Raspberry Pi is downstairs. Okay, I'm gonna send it to myself. Okay, the subject is going to be the exact same subject that I've been using so far, simply because I have a filter in my Gmail. Alright, and lastly, it's going to be this message is sent by the Python class. Alright, that should be good. And it's sent. There. This is a message. Oh, this must be from the other one. Oh yeah, this message is sent by the Python class. That's it. Right here. I can also use, say, if I use email localhost, that means I'm going to be using Postfix, right? That was the logic. If I do that, good. And I'm going to use the same function. And that should also work. However, the email is not going to appear here. I should probably distinguish it by this way. This message is in a Python class and postfix there.
sent again. I believe it's going to be in spam. No. Oh, there are 3 of them here. There we go. This is the latest. I've been testing it out. So yeah, this was the first, which I sent out, and then I edited it. This message is sent by the Python class at Postfix. So that's it. That's how you create a class in Python and import and send out. So right now we have a good solid email class that we can use for literally anything, for any other project that we need to send an email out. Say you're trading, say you're I don't know, you need to email yourself for certain things that happen throughout the day. Then this is a perfect class, a function, or Python script that you can use for all other projects that you're going to create later on. So that pretty much concludes my demo for this this topic, and hope to catch you guys later on next. Thanks. Bye.